BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. So today, our upload is going to be focusing on Chris Benoit and the double murder suicide that really took the WWE brand by storm. I got back into this one because we've mentioned it on the channel before. Earlier in 2019, we were talking about Chris Benoit and some of the alternative theories surrounding his death, as well as the death of his wife Nancy and their son Daniel. But I got into this one more recently because I found a clip of the 3 hour special that they had put out. By they, I mean WWE, following the death of Chris Benoit and his family. And I found the clip from the wrestler Edge, Adam Copeland, and he was kind of giving somewhat of a eulogy, somewhat of kind of memorial and tribute thing to Chris Benoit. And he was just crying and just being so emotional. And I always remembered how it started out, just that there are only 3 people in this industry that I can talk to, and 2 of them are gone. And I remember when I first heard that back, when these things happened live and I was watching WWE Raw, I was kind of someone who worked with like my university theater, and I thought that just sounded just, so much more pure than any performance that I had ever heard because it was real. And there's just a lot of emotion that was surrounding the deaths of Chris Benoit and his wife, Nancy, back in 2007. Very specifically, it was June 22nd, 2007, when we kind of experienced a very bizarre thing in the WWE. And that was that Chris Benoit was scheduled to do a pay-per-view for Vengeance and to become Vengeance Night of Champions to become the ECW champion. He had a match scheduled against CM Punk, and they thought that he was going to be a world champion once again. But the thing is, though, that of course he called in, said that his wife was vomiting blood, but in reality there was a different type of family emergency. And a lot of people just couldn't really comprehend what was going on. This wrestler, Chris Benoit, went on like the official version is that he committed the murder of his son Daniel and then committed the murder of his wife Nancy. He used a wrestling choke on his son to strangle him to death, and then he strangled his wife by kneeling on her back and applying his hands to her throat. He then hanged himself from the weight set in his home. He actually was one of the cases where he placed a pad or a cloth around his neck and he hanged himself, and that drew a lot of suspicion about people are just kind of wondering why some individuals do that. On this channel recently, we mentioned the case of Lyle Stevick during the Jeffrey Epstein upload, because just talking about Lyle Stevick also did that. He placed a pad or some sort of cloth around his neck. I believe that this is done during suicides because some people believe that they won't be able to tolerate the amount of pain that it would require to asphyxiate themselves, as opposed to it's not really good. There's no other motivation for that, really. But we mentioned a lot of those things in our previous Chris Benoit upload. Right now, I really would just like to talk about some of the things that they have here in this article from fanbuzz.com. They actually put something out earlier in 2019 as well, and I think it's very good to have some sort of more recent discussions about it. Just to read a little bit here. Over the years, researchers have found that effects of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, otherwise known as CTE, was a major factor in the brain functioning of Chris Benoit during the time of the apparent double murders and suicide. Chris's dad, Michael Benoit, permitted his brain to be examined. Findings concluded that Chris was suffering from this common syndrome among athletes who suffer multiple head injuries in contact sports. Very famously, Chris Benoit did the diving headbutt where he would climb up the turnbuckle, jump off, and, hit the opponent with his head. And many times you would see that it would almost do more damage to him than it would to the opponent. And, it's a very dangerous move. But, to continue, findings concluded that Chris was suffering from this syndrome, and it led to an increased risk of depression and cognitive impairment. Chris Benoit was somebody that was so well appreciated by the WWE. As we mentioned, though, Edge just looked at him as like the person who was an advisor, someone who helped him through things, the person that, would tell him what to do after his neck surgery. Is it normal to feel this way? And he said, though, that there was not a single person in the WWE that thought poorly of Chris Benoit. right after this incident took place, Chris Jericho went on, I believe it was CNN, and he was sort of saying that I love the man, but I hate what he did. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that there are two things that followed. One is that lots of conspiracy theories originated, and the second one is just that a lot of people just couldn't comprehend why someone who was so well loved and who was just such an upstanding member of World Wrestling Entertainment would commit such a horrible action, murdering his wife and son and then taking his own life, especially when he was scheduled to become the ECW champion. And one of the things is, it's just that I think that CTE is going to be something that we're going to be talking about much more frequently over the course of the next couple of years. It's probably going to be something that is going to be dealt with not only World Wrestling Entertainment, but also the NFL. Some people are just saying that the NFL is just too brutal to continue, and certain actions in World Wrestling Entertainment might be too brutal. Like, for example, taking chair shots to the head, which was something that has been removed following Chris Benoit. So I think that, as we see here, though, Chris Benoit had some major things that were kind of affecting his personality, his thought process. They were leading to increased paranoia. He had 30 routes mapped out to the gym so he couldn't be followed. And it's just like, it's really just, you can see that his mental state was deteriorating as a cause of head injuries over many years of wrestling. And as we mentioned, that Chris Benoit was the person who did the diving headbutt, but he was also somebody who took chair shots to the back of the head. So we just see that everything bad was going on. Not to mention, WWE has a very hectic work schedule, as well as people take steroids and painkillers very frequently. Like Hardcore Holly said very clearly, everybody's taken something to kind of alleviate the pain, and by something he means most likely performance enhancers if it helps, overcome pain from an injury. And I don't think that that's too much of a controversial statement now. But this article from FanBuzz goes on to talk about how in Chris Benoit's brain there was confirmed to cause neurodegeneration, cognitive impairment, and dementia. He was going down that pathway. So in short, it's just like his brain wasn't functioning properly at the time of the murders. And I think a lot of people just really couldn't come to grips with that. But there's another thing that I would say. This happened, as we said, June 22nd, 2007. This was when social media was in its infancy. We just had the rise of Facebook in 2006 and the rise of YouTube in 2006 as well. I know that they had, social media prior to 2006, but you were really seeing the way that people were connecting with it in a variety of ways. And I believe that this was a time when this was one of the newer cases of major shocking event for World Wrestling Entertainment, and people responded to it by taking to social media and just spreading rumors and ideas. And that's what led to the story of Chris Benoit the way we have it now. And WWE is enormous on social media. If you look at the NFL right now, I'm not sure when you'll hear this, but you can see the NFL might have, 5 million, 6 million subscribers on YouTube. How many do you think the WWE has? It's like 44 million or something like that. I don't have the exact number in front of me. But, WWE is enormous on social media, much more so than the other professional sports. But what we can say about this is, it's just that I think a lot of people just really couldn't accept that someone who was so well loved, someone who was just such a good member of the community could commit such a horrible act. So you saw the fabrication of many conspiracy theories, as well as the sharing of unconfirmed information. If you've followed anything about the Chris Benoit case, you might remember that supposedly somebody updated the Wikipedia article talking about the murders prior to the death of Chris Benoit. It's like, how could somebody update the Wikipedia article before the stuff was made public? Apparently the investigators went through with that and they checked it out and it was nothing, but rumors will spread like wildfire. And it's like, this was one of the first times that social media had such a major story, and they just were spreading all things around. And I really think that this is one of the reasons why the situation was blown out of proportion, when it really sounds like this is somebody who had a deteriorated mental state that caused impairment in his judgment. an impairment in his thought process, CTE. We're going to be having many more conversations about it. And once again, I think that that's what pushed somebody who was, a very well respected person and who was actually a good person at heart, went all the way down to this pathway of destruction. Impaired mental function, very, very much so over a long period of years. And that's going to be our mini upload for the day, and that's where we're going to have to leave it. But I would like to once again cite the article from fanbuzz.com, The Disturbing Truth of Chris Benoit's Double Murder Suicide. This was written by Chris Featherstone. Okay, well, that's all for me now. And what would you have to say? Do you think that there are certain sports that are going to be really under fire for CTE in the future? I mean, my kind of question is, do you believe that this is going to really change how we watch sports and how people who play sports go through the process? Are we going to see a revamping of the NFL and a revamping of the WWE into milder forms over the years? Or do you think that people are just going to accept things the way they are? And how much do you think CTE would have played in the role of Chris Benoit and the double murder suicide from 2007? Until next time.